Quiet down. I want to hear Claude.
Joe knows I was in the National Guard, and I can make him get out of here. First sergeant's a tough job. Raise your hands if you're newly started or getting started, interested. Anybody never done POTA? Oh, come on, Chris. Terry told me better too, by the way.
Oh, can I turn off the light and see if it's going to go?
If it helps, sure, that'd be great. You don't have to look at me as much because the light's off me. Thank you, Robert. Anyway, there's nobody that's never heard of POTA before. Have you ever? Great, good. Makes it easier. So, have you ever activated a park? Raise your hand. You ever hunted a park? Raise your hand. Got a lot going on there. You ever worked on Georgia State Parks on the air before? We're doing pretty good. Well, gosh, this is a great show. Thanks. It is nice to have some experienced people, but it doesn't mean we all had the same experience. And I saw walking back from when I went to eat at lunch, I saw an MPOTA sticker. Who knows what MPOTA is? Go ahead. Okay, cut off. Oh, well. Yeah, in 2016, the anniversary of the National Park Service, ARRL put on the MPOTA. I don't remember the number of parks because I didn't know about it then. But it was such a big hit, so many people went out to national parks that, let's say Jason Thompson and the crew of people up there around Maryland, D.C., and some other places too, started up parks on the air. And it has blossomed ever since then. But their premise was to make it go longer and more fun and that sort of thing too. Let's work, yeah, okay. So now, after all that startup, it's become an international thing where parks or natural reserves and anything you can kind of identify the same way qualify for POTA sites. And so that now there's 55,000 parks, as you see, in 168 countries and growing. If you ever want to do map research for countries that don't have POTA parks, let me know, because they're actually looking for people to add on parks in places that they hadn't had them before. I've had the pleasure of doing it in a couple of countries, like the Ivory Coast, and working on Kazakhstan now. It's quite challenging with all the differences in the layouts of parks and languages, but it's fun to do it. But I also do that in the state of Georgia too. 759,000 activations as of a couple of days ago. And look at the number of QSOs, 32 million. And this is just since 2017, so in 7 years, it's really grown up. And that's how the Activator count grew up. And you see now we're at 12,471 just a few days ago. It's a live feed off the website. You can go and look at the top activators. You look at top hunters, it's an incredible number. But that's a pretty big shift. Of course, 2020 made a big change. Look at from 2020 to 21, more than double. But it continues to grow the same way for lots of reasons. And why did it grow? Well, who's ever looked at a website that doesn't change? You go back to see somebody's club website saying it looks like it did 2 years ago. It doesn't have live information. Well, POTA's not like that. You go in there and it's active. It's got good, quick access, and I think they'd have a mutiny if it ever crashed. But it does happen. They run on Amazon web servers, so we blame Amazon if it ever drops. There's always activity. I mean, if you want to try out your radio, turn it on to a POTA station. You're going to find somebody out there all the time. Find out how good a radio setup you have, whether it's at home or in a park, but there's always somebody there. Robert, you're even there at 2 o'clock in the morning sometime, I know. Because he's going to parks and set up, and a lot of people do that. We'll stay at a park several days straight, run FT8 when you're awake. I know you're not asleep when you're doing that. But no matter what, there's always other stations out there. You get to go outside. If you're an activator, you can hunt outside at home if you want to. But the big encouragement is to get out, to see the rest of the world outside the four walls of your work or your house, to activate. But also, it's no good to be an activator if there's not a hunter on the other side. Very simple rules. Some people might argue with that, but it's pretty darn simple. You go out, you activate, somebody contacts you, you chase them down. It's just not that hard. I can do it. And you get lots of recognition. Who's got an award from POTA? Who hadn't got an award from POTA? Have you looked, Mark? Okay. Because that's one of the first ones you get if you go to parks. That was ain't it pretty? A bronze certificate for having proof of going and activating 10 unique parks. I mean, it's not the same one over and over again. I actually had to go somewhere besides Watson Mill Bridge. And you get these cool things, and Jason Johnson's signature still shows up even though he's not as actively involved as he once was. And if you ever get the next level for more contacts, you'll notice sometimes the date doesn't change, because the first time you get a bronze, it still stays the same. And now, what parts count for POTA? Who knows? I mean, it's right there on the screen, of course. But it is so-and-so a park? Well, did you look on the list? That's the first thing I think. And I usually hold back and don't say that, because did you read the manual? It's not a good answer. But if you see a park on the list, it's got a number, it qualifies as a park. If you want to add a new park, well, then you have to qualify it. It has to be owned and operated by a state or federal agency. If it's in other countries, the equivalent level of government has to be the owner. In the US, it can't be a city park or a county park or somebody's backyard park. It's got to be qualified. But that reminds me, about a year ago, somebody called me from Rome and said, hey, we'd like to meet. Anybody from Rome? They meet every second Thursday for a lunchtime meeting at a city park. Can't we make it a party? Well, I want to say no and add some things to it, but I didn't. I got thinking, scratched my head. Who's ever heard of the Trail of Tears? Do you know the Trail of Tears runs through that river in downtown Rome, Georgia? They were within 100 feet. Problem solved. You got to look at it a little bit more, and your map, Canaan, would probably show that too. Can't be a sub-park, so I can't go and put a park inside another one and have an automatic twofer. You can't do that. And you got to ask for help. You can send an email to help@parksonair.com or contact your state mapping representative. That'd be me. Get a card. Let me know if you see something that needs to be different. That's what happens when you raise your hand to help. You get to do it. So. Who's doing POTA? A lot of people that hadn't operated like me. I got my license in '92. I moved to Athens about 6 or 7 years later, and because of all the things that happened in your life, including moving in HOA, it was harder and harder to get on the air, so kind of dwindled, my ham activity did. Until back in 2020, had some leftover pieces from a repeater in Elberton, sold them to the Athens Club, walking by an antenna, and the guy said, Jess Hickey, M4JAH, anybody know Jess? He said, I use that for Parks on Air, and I'd never heard of this thing. So new people that hadn't been active in a long time. Then you get new hams that went to a field day, went to a Hamfest, want to be a ham radio operators, and they get somebody like me and said, you need to hear about Parks on Air. And they become a new ham, and they get out and do that. Or same way, we go with a club to a big event in their community and see how fun it is to be on the receiving end of a pileup, like at field day. And a lot of people have licensed or upgraded recently to start doing HF activities. And like I mentioned earlier, an activator goes to the parks, they call CQ, and you can hunt other parks from the park, get a park to park, and you get and give a complete exchange. What's a complete exchange? Anybody know? Signal port's good, not absolutely required, but it's usually good. Part number's good, you should repeat it off. The main thing is say, I'm so-and-so and I hear you. That's really that simple. Alpha Charlie 4 Sierra Hotel, 59 Georgia, 73 QRZ. And that's about as quick as it goes some days. You can spot, if anybody hadn't looked at the POTA app, it's not an app, it's a web page. You can pull it up on your phone right now. You can see a list of people if you're already signed up that are at parks now. And I'll show you the spotting page later. But you don't have to do that. Some people do Discord, don't they, Chris? But you know, any way you can communicate, whether it's text messaging to your friends or any other, there's lots of ways you can spot. And you have to file that log if you want credit. And your hunters, George, if I didn't file it, you wouldn't get credit. You know, so I always upload my logs pretty quickly. And how do you activate? You can put a radio in the park. What kind of radio? Whatever you got, basically. There's a lot of opinions about what will, what won't work. The main thing is you got to be in that park. You got to put everything in the park. You can be portable. You can drag around a bag, go up the hilltop and do it, or you can just pull up in your car with the ATAS and 891. You know, it works. And you have to keep it all in the park, so you can't have a park in your backyard and decide to drag an antenna over there and say you qualify, because you really got to all be there. Not too many people do that, but you know, somebody's always wanting to do a little shortcut. And it has to be, we've talked to somebody earlier about activating from Amicalola in the lodge. You know, that's iffy. You're still in a public area, so it depends. You probably wouldn't want to do it from laying in bed, but if you're out on the back deck, it'd probably work. I don't know about that. Robert, tell me about it. Hunters on the other end, they see the people in the parks activating. And they can be at home, they can be driving down the road, they can be portable in another park. It doesn't matter, as long as they answer your CQ call when you're out there. They have to do the same thing. It's not going to be a valid cue, so if Kilo Delta 4 Yankee Delta Charlie doesn't call me back and say, I hear you, because it, you know, it can't say, hey, Claude, this is Robert, basically. It's supposed to have the full exchange, and it usually works out pretty well. We hope the hunters will find us when we're in the park, and that's what I do when I'm sitting in the park too. Respots. Anybody ever done a respot? Come on, raise your hand. Why do you want to do respots? I'll show you in a minute.
You want the spot to stay current, otherwise the spot will go away.
That is a good point. The spots will disappear after 10 minutes, I think it is. But the other thing is, if you're sorted by time, it moves them back up the top. And the side benefit for it, if you work that other station, it can be grayed out so you don't go back and try to get them again.
It also keeps a record of who has worked for you if they respawn.
Exactly right. It will keep track of who has been working my station. Kind of sometimes good to go back and look and see who that was. Not that I ever missed a call, but you know, it happens.
Never.
Yeah. So if you hadn't already, once you leave here, I'll stop if you want to go ahead and sign up. But anyway, you go to the website, POTA.app, and the first thing, if you're not signed up, is it's going to prompt you to sign up, create an account. It takes a little time. It says wait for approval, which usually comes pretty quickly. And then it'll open up to read these rules, watch these videos, learn what you need to do. But some people don't quite go through all that and you have to go back over the same rules over and again. But it's no problem. It's still fun. But once you sign up after you establish an account, you're going to have probably awards if you've already worked stations. I mean, it's just that quick. The spots page. Am I going too slow, or you guys tell me? All right. Well, you can do filters by band mode. Program is country. Whether they go on QRT or you've hunted them, that's what I kind of alluded to before. Sort by time comes up default. You'll see on the next page I use frequency because it stacks them up better and they don't roll off screen the same way. And sometimes, especially since 10 meters has been hot lately, there's a lot of people on 10, and so I've been filtering by band, so I only see the one I'm really wanting to do, or one I've got an antenna set up for. Some people don't realize you can pause that scroll. So there's a little 2-bar thing like on everything else that plays back, and you can stop it from going off your screen. And you can change it to light or dark and table or tabs. That's my default. So that's the table format. You got line by line by line of operators, and it's sorted by frequency because I've got that, well actually it says time, because I was trying to show you where the drop down was. Over there, there's a blue mark, or orange mark by mode, because guess what, Claude don't often do anything but voice, but that's okay. But I don't have to look at those other ones, and you can do the same. That's the table, tab, what do you call it? Forgot the name of it now. Anyway, that's where you see individual cards for each station. And what's really nice about that is you kind of get it all presented. Some people see it better in that arrangement, some like it in lines. And that's a late shift or night mode right there. Sure that at some point that's really handy, and it just depends on what you want the screen to look like. But any of these screens you go to, you see the call sign, you see the part number, and you can click on or hover over those. And like I did on Kilo Oscar 4, Delta Charlie Papa, I don't know who he is, how active they've been. You see, as soon as you open it up, it shows their profile, and you can go even deeper into it. Didn't come out so clear in here, but it shows the number of times they've activated part, number of contacts they've had, how many they've hunted, if you're just sitting there trying to figure out what's going on and whether it's somebody you really want to work or who they are. Now, also on that screen, there was every part has a name and number. If you click on that, it'll tell you where that park is, and it'll open a map, or you can go over there and pull a map by location for US and the state, and it'll pull your full map up. Or if you know the park number, like Stone Mountain, anybody know Stone Mountain? US 9799, you can type that in, and it pulls your page up like that right there, which has tons and tons of data, but you don't have to wait for it to refresh. Like I said earlier, this comes quick and fast. In the green text mid-screen is the URL if you want to find out what Stone Mountain's all about. If the map manager did a good job, put the right website in there. And also you can see on the right side who's the last activator there, and more information further down. And that's the map. Those yellow dots are exactly where you have to activate, right? No, you only can put one dot. Some of those parts, like the Trail of Tears is a good example. It starts down near Gainesville and goes into 6 or 7 other states, and it's really spread out. So you got to look at the website to figure out where it is. And that's why it wasn't obvious to the guys in Rome that they were close enough to the Trail of Tears to make it count. But gigantic national forest, Chattahoochee Oconee covers about a fifth of the state, I think, and it covers a lot of chances for multiple parks up there. But you click on the yellow dot, and you can find out more information about what it is. Now that's the complete exchange we're talking about. Your call sign, your location and part number, and you don't even have to say the location part number every time, but some people do more often. It is a little frustrating when you see somebody on the spot, you think that's what they said, but you don't have the part number. But often people will tune and hear you calling CQ POTA and they stop. They don't really know who it is. They just want that contact. And say, oh, by the way, what's your call sign? You got to say it again. Oh, where are you? Well, I thought I just said that. But you can't make the assumption that they're always listening. Somebody's liable to tune around. You got to say your call at some point. When you send in your log, you got to have the date and time on, not off. And those are standards from the ADIF file format. The mode is as simple as phone, data. Actually, there's multiple, but is it phone, is it CW, is it FT8? There's a few other choices there too. And if in the band, you don't even have to have the exact frequency. Is it 40 meters or it's 10 meters or is it 2 meters? That happens. Even though you like to keep track of the frequency, you don't have to put it in to get POTA credit. And if it's part to part, you should get their part number. On POTA, it's not quite as important as it will be later when we get to Georgia State Parks in the year. Nice to know, though. For some people who like to chase a lot of parks, Chris, I'll keep picking on you. I know you worked all the Georgia parks as a hunter, right? That means that Chris has managed to keep track of who's popping up there, and he keeps a list of how many Georgia parks he's worked, and some other states too, I'm sure. But when you do the log upload, the activator is the only one that has to do it. The hunter can't do it, but they have to do it to get everybody credit for it. You can actually log with a pen and paper. You can use pencil, I guess, too. But you don't have to use computerized logging, but it makes it easier for me, but that's the way I am. I can't read my own writing. But if you do, you can manually enter it. That's down at the bottom down there. And what's the best POTA logger program? Who knows? I'd start an argument because there's so many different ones. If you got a favorite, let me know. I can think of, but N3FJP's AC log is the one I use, but Hammers is still hot. In fact, it's getting support again. Ham2K Polo. Some people like to do paper and come back home and log on their standard logger these at home, like M1MM or Log4OM, and the Ham Radio Deluxe. I think you can do it there. Some people do it live on QRZ. I mean, there's a bunch of ways you can go. So none of them are wrong, just as long as you can figure out who you contacted and submit a file. We're good. Actually, you can still email those logs in to, if you're a full call, it's K4@parksandair.com. I think it still works, but now you can upload the file or type them in. So now, that's enough about Parks and Air. You know everything, right? Now, I was talking about Georgia Parks on Air, Georgia State Parks on Air. And that's the web page. If you got my little card, scan the QR code. It's one of the links that'll pop up there. And we started this 25. What's only been 2 years ago? This will be the third year coming up, 25, but started in 23. And we had 50 parks to start with. Didn't make any big changes since this April, and it's coming up again that soon. But before we did it, you notice in our logo, it's got the POTA logo. This is, you get this warning for Parks and Air. Don't use our logo if you're going to make any money with it. So that's why I was kidding about the money. But they said, yes, that's great. Anything you do to make Parks and Air more active, cool. In fact, this year I emailed them again. They said, keep on doing what you're doing. So no conflict. The guy from Mississippi asked me about that at Huntsville. I said, can we do that? It works for us. So no complaints. We changed to using the same numbers that Parks and Air uses. And the significance of that is some programs work from parks, but they have special abbreviations, and that gets complicated. Why mess up or start a new program? We're just going to use these 52 parks we picked out. And no change to the log file. And again, you can't use it for commercial use, and they're okay with us using a POTA spotter. But we were cautioned, since it looks like a contest, don't use the warp band 60, 30, 17, 12, because it's against the rules that we agreed to when we started using those bands. Any mode, anyhow. Has anybody done a satellite POTA contact? You could. It's legal. That's one repeater allowed. Everything else should be simplex. I've never heard anybody doing it, but I know it can happen. Those guys from WV2P and NM9X, they do slow scan TV sometimes on park. I don't know who they're going to work, but at least they make contacts. And we're limited, Georgia State Parks and Air, to 100 watts. There's no restriction on POTA in general, but for our program, that's what we're limited to. And what makes it work? Well, we took advantage of them spending all the money on Amazon servers, and we're using their platform as much as we can by using those part numbers, not changing practices much from what they do, and using the ADIF format that they do. Who's never heard of ADIF? It's okay if you had. That's a .ADI file name, and there's a specific format structure for logging parts in, and that's become very standard. And just about every logger that we mentioned will generate a file in that format, and you can even read it plain text if you open it up in any kind of text browser. The reason we started off was to get as many Georgia parks on air at once as we could. We felt like it'd be a challenge to get all 225 activated in one day, but we figured 52 would be a little more attainable, and it worked pretty good. Like I said, the first one was in 2023. The 52 parks, you look on the POTA list, they say state park on the end, You look on the Georgia State Parks and Historical Sites list, they're not all on there because some of them have changed their operation standards. Standing Board down at Columbus, who's ever been down there? Now it belongs to the city of Columbus, but since it was grandfathered in, Hart State Park over in Hartwell is really a county park now. And like Stone Mountain or Jekyll Island, they are not on that other list as well, but they still qualify because they meet the owned and operated by the state at the point they were added to the list. And there's a list of the parks. As much as I'd like to get some in that hole down there between Macon and Tifton, it just, nothing would fit for a state park. And so we got 52, and everybody always says, I wish there was one closer to me, but that happens. But that's the ones we have there. And I marked Centennial and Stone Mountain at the end because they were last added, that we added to the list. And they definitely are owned by the state and operated by a state organization. Ask me how I know. Took a little look and make sure it works. Okay, so this April 24, we had that many operators. So 49 activations, 9 clubs, that 11,000 QSOs. Got 51 or 52, who knows which one didn't get activated. Colin's not here to pick on. Go ahead, Chris. Suwannee River Eco Lodge, way down south, close to the Suwannee River. Okay, so we did good, and we're gonna reserve a spot at Suwannee River Eco Lodge this year to get somebody down there, and have 4,000 hunters. That's a bunch of people on 2-day weekend that called us at Georgia Parks, I think. And that's Collins. He's not here. I asked him if he's going to be here if I could brag him out, but he went to a bunch of parks, and he was one that missed the Eco Lodge, but he was all over the place. If you didn't work KO4 Isaiah K on phone that weekend, you just somehow know you didn't hear him. So, but he was going. And that's the top activator, top hunter. He knows Bob up in Blairsville. Bob put up a 40-meter dipole, and he watched that spotter, so he made a bunch of 40-meter sideband contacts within the state. And I don't remember how many parts he got, but that's how he got that big number. And Bob's only been a ham a short period. I'm not going to say 2 or 3 years. All right, so third time, April 5th, 2025, 8 till 8 basically, or 1200 Zulu to midnight Zulu on Sunday. And of course, if you stay in the park, you don't have to worry about the gate, and that is one advantage. I don't blame you, Robert. I did the same. I'm getting me a camper, by the way. That's all right. All right. Now, this is the different types of activators. You can be an individual, go out to a park. You can be a club. We expanded the definition of club so there wasn't any question. If 2 people are on an activation, even if they're not an established club, and they want to call themselves a club, compete against clubs, they can do that. And that's because we'd like to increase the amount of people in the parks and make it possible. You can go to one park or you can go to multiple parks. You can do who does QRP? What do you operate mostly?
CW.
And you go over 5 watts on CW?
That's it. 500.
Well, I call 10 watt sideband. Okay, so it's in the rules, 10 watts on sideband, right? But I actually made a lot of contacts last year on 10 watts. Plus the batteries are smaller too. But it's just whatever you want to do. And low power, it's kind of reflects the way that ARRL field day, low power is under 100 watts. Seemed like a lot to me, but anyway. So. And that's the way you score points. However many contacts you make, plus 5 times every Georgia park. So we encourage activating the Georgia park. So if I catch somebody at Fort Yargo and I'm at Watson Mill and I work from park to park, that's 5 more QSO points for me. If I go to 5 parks, I get to multiply all that times the number of parks I went to. You can see the number of Georgia parks you go to multiplies, but also the number of in-state parts does, and that's to encourage more Georgia participation. But it also gets a lot of people chasing us around too. And there's still bonuses for repeat offender. So if you activated 23 and 24, you get 50 points this year. We may change that next year, or 26 if and when, but right now that's still the same way. A first timer, that's got a little, some interpretation there. Initially it's supposed to be the first time somebody activated a part, but we're on the honor system, so you know, it's up to you to be honest. And what's the PPPD? That's if you hike in and go a mile, you get 100 points for every part per day that you hike in. So I do know one guy got 3 1-mile bonuses for hiking. He was QRP obviously too. It wasn't me. Hunters, in-state or out of state. And you can't be a hunter from inside a park, or you'd be an activator, but anyway. We had one guy from Ohio, he changed the call, WB8 CPG, it's new. Anyway, he was a heavy chaser, and he activated or contacted a lot of Georgia parks. And Bob got the most in-state. And that's the way hunters, it's the number of contacts with Georgia parks in total, plus the number of parts that were distinct. So if he contacted me 40 times at the same park, or contact somebody at the same park 40 times, he'd only get 40 points. But if he worked two parks, he'd get 2 times that. So the more Georgia parks he worked, or a hunter works, you got that. And there's bonuses for hunters for repeat offender or 2 days, and then that was written in there to encourage hunters to get out both days. I think we had a holiday come up the first weekend of April this year, and I can't remember what it was. A long time ago now. And the web page, Richard, is he in here, M1RBD? He set it up first year, worked good for us, but Robbie, I don't even give Robbie credit, right? Whiskey 1 Radio Charlie Papa, he took it on this year, and now you can sign up for parks smoothly. You send in your ADI file, it calculates your score, and the hunters don't even have to submit a log. It's sort of like POTA. They get credit based on the activator logs that go in, and as soon as you drop your file in there, it's going to tell you you got errors, but if it doesn't have errors, it'll generate a score for you right away. And that's what we had to have for Georgia POTA. Same stuff. Got to have your call. Got to have the hunter's call. I mean, we know where we are. Got to know when it was, what time it was, band and mode, your part number, but also if you want credit for park to park, and you do, especially if it's a Georgia park, make sure you got that field in there. I know it seems obvious right here, but believe me, it doesn't always happen that way. But if it doesn't work right, it says you made a mistake here, send an email and we'll fix it for you, or at least figure out what it went wrong. Not going to change much this year. We're still talking about a few potential changes, but not a lot. But I would like to know if anybody's got any ideas or thoughts. I'm close to the end of this thing. I think I am.
Question?
Okay.
So, and I want to be honest, I don't want to cheat, is I'm in my normal POTA setups when I'm RV, I'll set up 2 training speakers. I'm bringing 2 training speakers at one time. Well, FTA inside.
No, and we don't have anything written in there for, I guess I could use mine. We don't have anything written in for multiple transmissions.
I'm asking for awards or anything. I just want to know, is that legal to do?
Is it legal for parks in the air?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Then I think that's it. But go ahead.
I didn't want to cheat, you know.
Right. And what was your comment?
SO2R, commonly referred to.
Yeah, seen a lot too radios, that's right. And it's not against the rules. We don't have anything specific about that, so go for it, is all I can say. As long if you make the winner a lot, we're going to get you though. Any other suggestions, thoughts, questions? Get the word out there. See. by going to Hamfest and putting on presentations. You can do that. You could be here. You can have the mic right now if you want to. Fine with me. But I've been to a few club meetings, and I know you guys do too. And if you take this out to your club meeting and talk about it, but the best thing so far is the meetups. We had one at Little Lock Mulligan. Chris, there was what, 30 people or so down there? And that's, for me, it was a pretty good drive, but a lot of the other folks that were there drove an hour or more too to get to it, just because we advertised real well. I've talked to people today, at least 2 other spots. Gil didn't make it, but he's up in northwest Georgia. He wants to have one around Carter's Lake. And you know, it is a long drive, but if you want to encourage people to get out and be active on the radio, whether it's to eventually be available to do a quick setup for whatever emergency service it is, what better way to do it than to learn how to set up a station in a few minutes to operate from a park under less than perfect conditions like you might at home. Now, some people at Little Lock Mulligan brought their kitchen sink and everything and set up, and if that's the way you like to operate, it's just fine. But it's so much get to be gained by talking with people face to face, see what their setup is, and learn a lot more about it. Keenan, you were there. What did you pick up down there?
Well, we just had it was a lot of fun. There was a whole bunch of operating, and yeah, it's definitely, you can operate just about anything you bring and make contacts in the park. Because Aaron had his just a tiny CW rig, and so did Robbie. They had basically nothing but wires in the air and a tiny little rig. And then you had people with computer screens set up. So.
Absolutely right. Anything from the smallest to the largest, they all work. I went to one up at Don Carter one time. There was a 500 watt solid state amp sitting on the table. I will tell you, Thomas, K4SWL, he was afraid to grab the mic because he's always QRP, but he did. And you get to see the different setup, what antenna works better, what operating style works better. What do these POTA people look like in person? Sometimes, you know, you don't know. If you don't put your picture out there and you show up on those meetups, like, oh, that's you, you know. But it's so much that you get from that, and you feel a lot less afraid if you get out in the open and see how it works. George, I've been wondering what he looked like. I'm glad he showed up here. Anything else? Oh, okay. If you scan the code, that's what you get. Oh, go ahead.
Stupid question. Is there any kind of rule about what kind of wire or rope you can throw over freely into the state park?
State parks are not too picky that I've run into. Anything that says national in the title, better not do it at all. But in between there, it's up to the interpretation of the local place. And what he said, what can you put over a tree? You know, you don't want to damage a tree, and I think that's the original intent. They told me when I went to Cumberland I couldn't put stakes in the ground later after I'd already done it. But they didn't tell me down there. Somebody else said, oh, you can't be doing that. It didn't hurt the sand, and they never got on to me about it. But you want to be respectful, that's it. But there's no POTA restriction. It's just follow the rules of the local jurisdiction. Is that what you're thinking? Yes, sir.
How do you find out how would you go about finding out if there are restrictions like that, other than doing it and then getting in trouble for it?
Well, I mean, you know, forgiveness, you've heard that before, right? But if you're really concerned about it and worried, the problem you run into going to parks is we start from the radio side. I'm going to do a POTA. Well, you know, they've already lost, because you're not going to do it till you ask. What in the world is POTA? Much less how do you spell ham? A-M? No. So if you do want to ask, and I don't blame you if you want to, say, look, I'm going to do a hobby thing out here for a short period of time. If they really want to know about radio, you can get into that. More than that, say, I want to throw a line over the tree without damaging it, and I'm going to take it down in an hour or something like that. You got to be pretty basic to talk to. It'd be like asking anybody walk down the street if it's okay to do something. You got to be real clear. What'd you say, Robert?
So, also on the POTA.us website, and generally people type in notes as
Yeah.
well. And even talk about that this area is better to activate in than that area within that part.
Yeah.
You know, just certain things will be on that information. Yeah.
Inside POTA's app.
Yeah, it's on other sites.
Yeah.
Not activating, yeah.
There's a wiki too.
What information will be there.
And,
It's open, so you can also type in it.
add to that, what I've done is when I'm because if I'm going to drive from here to there, and it's going to take me 3 hours, and I've never been to this park or this WMA or whatever, I will go back and look at who activated last and send an email to those last few people and say, hey, what'd you run into there? If it's somebody with a 5 call that doesn't live in Georgia, well, they may not remember it, but the guy that's activated 2 or 3 times, they're more likely to be the one that's going to give me fairly clear information. What, did you have a follow-up?
I was just going to say, I just go to the park office and introduce myself. I've been all over this town.
That's who you would actually talk to.
That's,
In the radio station. Right.
Yeah.
The whole building that you pull up in. Right.
go ahead.
So not every, entity has an office, especially, where we are. We have a lot of
Yeah.
WMAs.
Yeah.
Like that, but they all have a website, and so if they have
That's a good point.
About any of that, they're pretty good about listening to it, national parks.
And even if the comments on the POTA page aren't clear or don't give you what you want, you can follow that email address, that URL, go to the website because it's going to give you local information and also have a point of contact there. Because like I said, a lot of the hunting areas don't have, I've been to lots and never saw a person in or out of the official capacity. But you go to the park office and it's hard to explain what you're really trying to do.
Another trick that I do is if you look at who's been activating that place the most often, then just look up those people and
Yeah.
look up on their QRZ
Yeah.
and say, hey, what's the scoop on this part?
Right.
Most people are pretty good about sharing.
Who updates the notes section? I looked at some of those parts, there was not even a notes section there.
It's weird.
I didn't know okay.
If you see something needs to be put on there, I can do it.
Like the notes you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not very long and not a lot of room to put in there. I think between what Robert's saying, that's also a POTA wiki that's not official, but there's a way to see that where individuals can contribute. But like we had a WMA that closed down in Northwest Georgia. I didn't know it was coming. I had to do the research. I made comments it's going to close at the end of the month, put that in there. But you can do a lot of different things that way too. But to me, it worked out better to go to QRZ, look up those last 3 or 4 activators and say, what did you run into? What was it really like out there? And will I have trouble? And what's a good location to go? So how do you find it? Chris, didn't you have that trouble? There's a WMA down near Jessup that was the road.
So wrong. The GPS.
The road looked like it was a real road. You get there and it says private drive. And, Google doesn't update everything all the time. So sometimes you have to drive around the corner. All right, anybody else? We're ahead of time. Gee, almost 10 minutes still. We did all right. Really and truly, if you go there, look this, I know you can't see it, but if you scan that URL, that QR code, you'll see there. Now, what do we got? Our webpage, the Facebook group. Who's on the Facebook group? Somebody, I know. If you don't like Facebook, you can go to Gaggle. Who's ever heard of Gaggle email? Well, it's sort of like Groups.io. But sure enough, if you'd rather get emails, I try to duplicate stuff between those two. We did the POTA sprint last weekend, wasn't it? Yeah, and which was all the parts for 4 hours. And the POTA page, POTA.app, is the last one right now. And there's a YouTube channel. I need to put Chris's YouTube channel on there too, because he's recording this for posterity. All right, anybody got anything else? I think that's all. Yeah, look at that pretty peach. All right, so that's all I got. If anybody's got any questions, please come see me. I don't see the next class coming up here, but he's going to be teaching the class on an NOVNA, which is pretty cool. Go ahead. I enjoyed it. What'd you have?